Hey, howdy friend. Welcome back to my game room. Say, a lot of people are familiar with Norse culture, Norse history, Norse mythology, but kind of in a Hollywood comic book sort of a way. But it is true that the Norse have a fascinating heritage. Their legends and sagas and adventures are unparalleled and fascinating study. One of the things that the Norse were very much into is playing games. A lot of athletic games, gambling games, drinking games, insulting games. They also were very much into playing table games. The most prominent series of games that the Norse played in days of old have come to be known as the Tafl games. Now, the Norse word for table is Tafl, T-A-F-L. When the Vikings ventured forth throughout Europe and beyond, they managed to take their games with them, and so their games influenced other cultures and were influenced by other cultures as well. But these games range from a very small Irish game called Branduv, and that's played on a 7x7 board, all the way up to Naftafl, which is the largest, played on an 11x11 board. Now there is another game called Alia Avangeli, which is much larger, like a 19x19 board. Nobody really knows the rules. There's only one reference historically recorded by monks in a manuscript from the 14th century, and it doesn't go into a lot of details about how to play the game. But arguably the most popular game from that whole series is this one called Tablut. I have here a Tablut game that I made up myself. It is a typical Tafl game. The two players' objectives are different. Their pieces on the board are different sets, different quantities, and so on. The first written account of Tablut was by a biologist who wrote under the name of Linnaeus in 1732, and he described the game in fair detail. This is a drawing that he made of the game in one of his journals. Over the years, game historians have collected oral traditions of folks who play the game and have refined it to a point where the rules are pretty well known. And so let's take a look at those rules right now, and then I will come back afterwards and talk a little bit more about the game itself. The Tablut board begins with the pieces on the board as follows. The king begins on his throne at the center of the board. It is called the Kanakis. He is surrounded by his personal guards, 8 proficient warriors sworn to save the king and to help him escape from his besieging enemies. Around the edges of the board are positioned 16 attacking soldiers, whose mission is to capture the king before he can escape to freedom, freedom being any space around the edge of the board. In Tablut, all pieces move like chess rooks, and the king's guards make the first move. No piece may land upon the throne after the king moves away from that space, not even the king himself. Any piece may move through the throne space, however, with no penalty. Any of the guards or soldiers may be captured by surrounding them orthogonally on either side. This is known as custodial capture, also known by other terms. It is possible to capture more than one enemy piece, either in a straight line formation or at 90 degrees to each other. A piece can also be captured if it sits in a corner by being flanked on 2 sides. The king is armed and may participate in any of these captures. The throne is considered hostile and is treated as an enemy piece to both players. That is, a piece sitting next to the throne orthogonally may be captured by one other piece, as shown here. If the king is on the throne, he can be captured if he is surrounded on all 4 sides. When this occurs, the attacking soldiers have won the game. After the king leaves the throne, he can be captured by 2 enemies the same as any other piece. So if the king should land on a space at the outer edge of the board, then the king has won the game. Now, there are several regional variances, of course, and as with all historic games, they evolve over the generations as they are played in different regions and so on. In some cases, they say the attackers go first, which gives them a tremendous advantage. Some rules say that the T-shape here where the attackers begin the game is their camp, and that once they leave the camp, they can never go back to the camp. They can't enter those spaces, and those spaces are off limits to the defenders. In other variations, which is reminiscent of some of the Irish versions, the king only escapes, the king only wins if he can get to one of the four corners. Now, there's a strong opinion that the game is just intrinsically not balanced. So whenever there's a tournament held, generally the elimination schedule is set up so that every player will play the defenders at least once and the attackers at least once to try to keep that balance. Hold on just a second now. It looks like maybe I skipped a whole page in my script when I did this original video, so I'll fill in now. There have been quite a few commercial productions of this game over the years, as you can well imagine. One of the more famous ones is probably this 3M game called Breakthrough. It's an adaptation of Tablut, sort of refined into a naval battle sort of a theme from 3M. There's also this Milton Bradley game called Swords and Shields, which is very clearly Tablut with some little plastic pieces. And in addition to that, there are a lot of European editions of the game. Of course, you'd expect that being pretty much a Northern European game anyway. Some other examples are King's Table, Oldenburger Königsspiel, Freedom's Contest, Saimaa, Swedes and Muscovites, I already mentioned that once, Scape, and Imperial Contest. I don't have pictures of all of those. Board Game Geek lists over 20 publishers of various versions of Tablut. In addition, there are lots and lots of what you might call artisan productions. People are offering at crafts fairs and so on, homemade or artisan-made copies of the game. Etsy has quite a few of them. This is an example of a homemade board, piece of leather, just drawn on, and it's very easy to adapt a set of chess pieces to the game. And so, interruption complete, and now we will return to our regularly scheduled program. But the game of Tablut is a fun game and a nice little asymmetrical strategy game. I definitely encourage you to pick up a copy and give it a try. There are online versions of the game that you can play, of course, but you can't beat playing with another person face-to-face. But I thank you for visiting the YouTube channel again, and hope you enjoyed this tidbit of information about the Norse game of Tablut. And if you play Tablut or any of the other Tafl games, or anything that you play, be sure to play every day.